Hands off! Their job, Kathy's told, is to observe, not to investigate. But she's an investigator, so she teams up with a local officer and they take the case to court. 2 months later, they win, which earns her tea with a UN official played by Vanessa Redgrave.
You've just facilitated the first conviction for domestic violence since the end of the war in Bosnia.
Well, it's just my job.
You can't imagine how that makes you stand out around here. The IPTF have a Gender Affairs Office. I think you're the right person to take over.
When she does, all of her cases involve women, many of them prostitutes at clubs and brothels frequented by the very men that Kathy works with each day, which is not a coincidence. Kathy uncovers a trail of bribes, sex trafficking, and worse that leads straight back to her UN colleagues. But the victims are afraid to testify. The UN, they have learned from experience, is just there to observe.
They can't really have one of their men involved in rape, kidnapping, and torture.
How do you do this if you work for the UN?
I'm an American police officer. Doesn't matter who I work for, I wouldn't let anybody get away with this.
You promise you can stop these men?
Well, I can't promise I can stop all these men. I
If
promise.
you cannot promise, then why? How do I know this is safe?
You're smoking.
Director Larissa Kondraki and writer Ailish Kirwan are making their feature film debut with The Whistleblower, and though it's based on a true story, they've made it zip along like a police thriller. A police thriller that's bleak enough and sobering enough that it would be tough to watch, if not for the controlled fury of Weitz's performance, a standout in what's shaping up to be an assertively feminist August at the multiplex. Next week, for instance, Whistleblower will be competing for audiences with an adaptation of the bestseller The Help. In that story of 60s racial discrimination, women so dominate that you'd almost think men didn't have opinions on the subject. And a week later, the French art house film Mozart's Sister will argue that 18th century sexism deprived the world of a potentially brilliant composer. These other films, let's look, directed by men and tell their stories of social injustice politely. The women behind The Whistleblower suit their filmmaking to the atrocities they're exposing and show no such reserve. I'm Bob Lindell.
This is NPR.
Support for NPR comes from NPR member stations and from Lionsgate with The Devil's Double, based on the true story of Uday Hussein's body double, forced into a world of power and greed, now playing in select theaters. From the William T. Grant Foundation, supporting research to improve the lives of young people, online at wtgrantfoundation.org. And from Carnegie Corporation of New York, a foundation created to do what Andrew Carnegie called real and permanent good, celebrating 100 years of philanthropy. This is NPR.
Peter Spiegelman wrote poetry and faster, but he thinks his time on Wall Street made him a real writer.
I was so young and so inexperienced, I have no idea what I would have had to say. 20 years of some life experience, and 20 years of hanging out on trading floors. It's actually a pretty good education.
Peter Spiegelman's Thickest Thieves, Saturday and weekend edition from NPR News.
Join us tomorrow morning beginning at 7 o'clock right here on KPR from 5 to 9. It's morning edition. Actually not. From 7 to 9. Sorry, Kay. I was just psyched there. You'd have to come in at 5, Kay. From 7 to 9, it's weekend edition Saturday. Your hosts are Scott Simon and Kay McIntyre.
Support KPR comes from Douglas County CASA. 20 years of advocating for abused and neglected children and for protection. Information about volunteering services and making donations online at dccasa.org.
Stick around. Coming up in our next half hour, an update of national and international headlines, and in just about 15 minutes we will find out if our very own agriculture reporter Eric Durbin has what it takes to be an auctioneer. Actually, we will find out what those auctioneer guidelines are coming up here on KPR. Don't go away. Later tonight, Bach in Brass with your host Marsha Higginson. That gets underway at 6 o'clock tonight. I hope you'll join us. It's 4:30. The news is next.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Jamie McIntyre. Stocks closed mostly lower after huge range of 400 points. However, the Dow ended the day up 60 points at 11,444. The S&P 500 closed down a fraction. The Nasdaq Composite closed down 23. Earlier, President Obama pointed to the latest jobs report as an encouraging sign.
But what I want the American people and our partners around the world to know is this. We are going to get through this. Things will get better. We're going to get there together.
The Labor Department reported the jobless rate inched down a bit to 9.1% in July. A federal jury convicted 5 current or former New Orleans police officers in the deadly bridge shootings and subsequent cover-up after Hurricane Katrina. However, as NPR's John Burnett reports, the jury did not find that the shootings amounted to murder.
These policemen were guilty of shooting at these individuals, or violating their civil rights, and of obstructing justice, of the cover-up in which they planted evidence, created false statements, gave false statements to the FBI, and then even falsely prosecuted 2 of these individuals. They framed them in order to blame them for shooting at police.
NPR's John Burnett reporting from New Orleans. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has accused the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad of killing more than 2,000 people in its crackdown against anti-government protesters.
President Assad has lost his legitimacy to govern the Syrian people. We continue to support the Syrians themselves in their efforts to begin a peaceful and orderly transition to democracy.
Meanwhile, Syria says its campaign to crush the uprising in the city of Hama is succeeding. This is NPR. The Army will cut its standard tour of duty in war zones from 1 year to 9 months for most units that deploy next year. Some high-demand units, such as aviation and military police, will still serve for 12 months. And the Army says the change will not affect combat troops heading to Iraq or Afghanistan this year. The move comes as the Iraq War winds down and as the U.S. begins what will be a gradual withdrawal from Afghanistan. NASA's Juno spacecraft is on its way to Jupiter, but as NPR's Joe Palca reports, not before a brief technical glitch.
The problem was with a helium supply system that appeared to be leaking just before launch. A diagnostic test showed that the leak was in equipment on the ground, not on the spacecraft, so engineers cleared the rocket for launch. Shortly after entering Earth's orbit, the rocket's second stage fired 9 minutes, placing Juno on a trajectory that will take it to Jupiter in August 2016. Once there, the spacecraft will go into orbit around the poles of the giant planet. Scientists believe Jupiter was the first planet in the solar system to form, so Juno will spend its time at Jupiter trying to compile an ingredient list that will distinguish the early planets from the ones that formed later. The spacecraft will also study Jupiter's magnetic field as well as the aurora of charged particles near the planet. Opelka, NPR News, Washington.
Authorities say a 65-year-old Northern California woman is the only person to die in a nationwide salmonella outbreak linked to ground turkey. The woman was one of 6 known salmonella victims in California. On Wednesday, the Agriculture Department asked Minnesota-based Cargill to recall 36 million pounds of ground turkey, saying the meat was linked to that one death and at least 77 illnesses. This is NPR.
Support for NPR comes from America's Natural Gas Alliance, whose members are participating in an online registry providing drilling information to the public. fracfocus.org.
From the University of Kansas, this is your place to find NPR News, Kansas Public Radio. You can listen online at kpr.ku.edu.
Support for KPR comes from Florence, Solar and Corporal Tiles for Densco. Heels, flats, or gloves, Densco offers a variety to cover the need of work or play. Available online, footprints.com or 1339 Massachusetts Street in Lawrence.
Partly cloudy skies this evening, becoming mostly cloudy overnight. A slight chance of thunderstorms, low of 72. Tomorrow, hot, humid, sunny, a high of 96. Heat index readings up around 106. Heat advisory goes into effect at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, running through 8 o'clock tomorrow night for most of the KPR listening area.
Support for Kansas Public Radio comes from Wheatfield's Bakery and Cafe, baking fresh cakes, cookies, and pastries daily and by special order. Open every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner in downtown Lawrence at 904 per month. Online at wheatfieldsbakery.com.
This is KPR.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Melissa Block.
On this first Friday of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, tens of thousands of Syrians took to the streets again to protest the regime of President Bashar al-Assad. But not in Hama. That city has been under siege for nearly a week now by Syrian security forces. Human rights groups say 100 people were killed in Hama yesterday alone. Many are fearing a repeat of the Hama massacre of 1982, when Assad's father crushed a rebellion there, killing at least 10,000 people. Robert Nally with the International Crisis Group has been tracking the Syrian uprising and the international response. He joins me now. Robert Nally, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
It's been 5 months of protests now around Syria. They've spread all around the country. Do you see an opposition movement that's still gaining strength, sweeping in groups who weren't engaged before?
Well, I think there's no doubt that the opposition is gaining strength. It's gaining support in terms of social classes, in terms of the spread of the country, and the mere fact that they've held on for so long, despite what